Good afternoon. My name is Alex, and today I will be showing you and explaining um, how to play Commander. It is a constructed format for Magic the Gathering that has a very different rule set that is different from the normal way that you would play Magic. Um, First things first is your deck. It consists of 100 cards, including your Commander. Which has to be a legendary creature that goes into the command zone rather than your library. Your deck can only include cards that utilize the same mana symbol or the same color of your commander. So therefore, if your commander is blue-green, you can only use colors blue and green for the rest of your cards throughout your deck. Only exception to that is artifacts, which are colorless and they can go into any deck. Other than basic lands, each card must have a different name, so you can't utilize cards with the same name other than the basic lands, which are mountains, plains, swamps, islands, etc., etc. And you can cast your commander or your legendary creature from the command zone as though if it was in your hand. And if they were to leave the battlefield or go anywhere, you can either choose to put it back in the command zone, or you can send it to the grave. But if you put it in the command zone, it will cost an additional 2 mana in order to bring it back out. And this mana is just generic mana. It can be any color, it can be any consistency. It doesn't really matter. And finally, there is something called commander damage. If your opponent is swinging at you with their legendary creature, attacking with their legendary creature, and they accrue up to 21 points of damage, no matter how high your life is, no matter what, as long as they hit 21 points of damage, that is you automatically lose for that. There's like other niche ways to win, but those are the basic rules for this format. It's a very sociable format, so you'll generally have people who would come and just want to really have fun, and nothing really too in-depth or competitive. It's really people just trying to try out different skill sets, different types of decks, different themes, or different play styles, really. Each color has a different play style that it's for. Certain colors can help get a big head start, and certain colors kind of just whittle your opponents down turn by turn. So it kind of depends on your theme of playstyle. For today, I will be showing you how I constructed my deck. It is a tribal deck, a tribal vampire deck, that is where my commander is Edgar Markov. Now, as you can see, he has Eminence ability. His Eminence ability states that whenever you cast another vampire spell, if this card is in the command zone or battlefield, you create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. Now, if it's in the command zone, that means anytime I would cast a plain creature spell, it's going to give me another vampire token. And this is what they look like. So the whole idea of this deck is to generally have a bunch of creatures that are small, and of course vampires, keeping consistent with the theme. You want to be able to have enough ramp in your deck, which consists of your lands, the type of lands you have, the artifacts you use, or little artifacts that you utilize to make things cost even less. Things like that would help you with your deck, because this is a very aggro deck. It's meant to just swarm the board, hit hard, and just swing all out. So yeah, with that, I'm going to jump right into the land base and talk about the types of lands that would be best suited for your deck, or any deck really in general, for especially those that are consisting of multiple colors. First lands we got is fetch lands. Now this is just a basic generic fetch land. If you were to play this, you technically count as playing your land for a turn, and if you were to tap and sacrifice it, you were able to pull from your deck a card of a certain type. That card, Evolving Wilds, you can pull any basic land. There are other more expensive fetch lands where you pay life and you can fetch other cards that have dual land types, or you can fetch cards that fall within the same means of that said land type that they list. Those are quite more expensive, but they're not necessarily needed to play. Again, Commander's meant to be just socially fun, just meant to have a good time, really experiment with different play styles and archetypes. One of the most prominent land types that you'll see in Magic is basic lands. These lands have no extra ability. You put it on the field. As soon as you play it on the field, you can utilize it. It produces only 1 mana of the said given color. Now, most of you guys are probably wondering, well, why not just run the deck with a bunch of basic lands? There's going to be times where let's say you have, for my example, a black, white, and red themed deck, Mardu, in other words. You may not be consistent with getting all your swamps out, so therefore you need dual lands to help fix your mana ratio and thus help you with your playability of your deck. The second land type that I utilize in my deck that I feel is very beneficial, these are called bounce lands. So basically what these lands do is you play this land, enters the battlefield tapped, so you can't use it right away, but it produces 2 mana of a given color. And then the only fee that you have to pay for it is you have to bounce another land to your hand. Now, if this is your only land in your field and you play it, well, you're gonna have to bounce it right back to your hand, and that does count for playing land for turn. So there's really no way of getting around that unless you have another land on the field. Next land we're gonna talk about is the basic tap lands. These generally have no effect. They can tap for one or the other color. Again, there are more expensive ones that you can utilize. Shock lands, for example, they deal you damage once they enter the battlefield. You can choose to pay the life or not and be able to have it enter the battlefield untapped. Me personally, again, I just want it for casual fun. I'm not looking forward to go full all out and annihilate my opponent. I just want to have fun, sit back, relax. A second land type that we have is cycling lands. These lands have 2 land types, as you can see, swamp and a mountain. And the cycling lands, I utilize cycling lands because there's times where you have too much mana and you just want to draw into your deck and thin it out and see what else you can reach for. I like cycling lands mainly because, again, you're thinning your deck and you can kind of scurry through what you might get the next card that you might be more better useful than that land that you have. Cycling lands generally come into the battlefield tapped, so they're not necessarily a land to be played all the time. They're more so a land to utilize for later game, to cycle off and just draw a card from the top of your deck. Second land type that is here, it's called ally lands. Now these lands say that since it is a swamp or mountain, it says that it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So you have to control a group of them or an ally of them. These lands are pretty proficient, they're cheap, not really super expensive, so that's why I utilize them. And again, they fit the same theme of swamp and mountain. So if you have a card like one of those expensive fetch lands that says, hey, tap, pay life, get a swamp or a mountain, that counts as a swamp or a mountain, so you can actually pull that land and play it on the field and without suffering any really cause. Third land type that we have is the tricolor lands. So this enters the battlefield tapped, and when it does, you won't be able to use it until your next turn, of course, but you can tap it for 3 different colors. You can tap it for generally whatever color scheme that your commander is with. So my commander is swamp, plains, and mountain. so I can tap it for red, white, or black. So it kind of, again, helps with your mana curve and your mana ratio. Second land types that we have is what we call pain lands. Now these lands, generally you can produce a monocolor, a non-color type of mana, so it has no binary color, or you can tap and add any mana of the given color, in this case black or white, and it would deal 1 damage to you. They're useful because they don't enter the battlefield tapped. You just have to be willing to risk paying the life loss for it. Those are the general land types I utilize in my deck. A lot of the I run approximately 35 lands. Some people run 40, depending on how big your creatures are. Some people run 45, and that's just so that they can keep consistent with their mana because their creatures are so fast. With that, the only color that wouldn't suffer this in that predicament is generally green, but even then sometimes you'll see some players occasionally hit a little struggle. Going on to the main part of the deck. We got past the lands, so let's get into a little bit of the creatures and the spells that we utilize for this deck. For my deck personally, I utilize one planeswalker that's really prominent that helps with my theme, and that is this one right here. Planeswalkers, they are a player amongst themselves, so their life total is right here. And normally a commander player would start off with 40 life. Whatever their number is on the bottom of the card is what their life is. They can gain life, or it's called upping their loyalty, or you can use their negative loyalties and subtract from their main life. But it also gives you bigger and better benefits throughout the duration of the game. Again, the only thing to keep in mind is make sure that your planeswalker is within the same color identity of your commander, because if not, then it's not technically legal to play. For the next spell, we have enchantments. I utilize 2 different types of enchantments in my deck. One enchantment is an aura. That's this one right here. The aura, what it does is helps me draw into my deck more. So I put it on one of my lands, and I can tap my land and utilize that land to draw more into my deck, getting the key essential cards that I need to utilize in order to win the game. It may sound as competitive, but it's really not. It's just a little fun niche way to kind of give a little bit of an edge and keep the other players on their toes. And then we have regular enchantments. Enchantments, they don't ever leave the field unless stated. There are enchantments now that will phase out after 3 turns. They're called sagas. But most enchantments generally stay on the field, or they're attached to something in some way, shape, or form, or they're cast upon an opponent, which are called curses. Yeah, that's pretty much it for enchantments. Going on to the next category, we have instants. Now, some of the instants that I use is pretty much board hate, essentially, so it's spot removal for the creatures that might be too big of a problem if they wait out throughout the duration of the game. And instants can be activated during any point in time. They can be activated during any phase, and unless another card rules saying that it can't be activated during that time. And generally can kind of throw your opponent off guard. It's almost like kind of a responsive type of action to utilize. The second spell that I'll be speaking about is sorceries. Sorceries can only be activated during your turn, and once they are used, they go immediately to the graveyard as the instants. They go immediately to the grave as well. The sorceries that I utilize in mine is either to get rid of the board, clear the board state or thin out through my deck and find certain cards that I need in order to, again, win the game more proficiently. The next card type I will be speaking to you about is creatures. Now, I mentioned earlier that my commander, it has an ability where if it's in the command zone, it is played. You can, when you cast a vampire spell, it produces another vampire token. So the key for this deck is to keep your converted mana cost relatively low, so therefore you can be consistently pumping out these little 1/1 vampires, and then over the course of time enhancing them with further enchantments or auras or spells, and kind of just swarming your opponent over with an abundance of vampires. The next spell I'll be speaking about is artifacts. Artifacts are pretty much used in every commander deck. There's pretty much not one commander deck that's not running at least one major artifact, and that main one is Soul Ring. It's people call them mana dorks, people call them mana ramps. Soul Ring is just an example of a spell that helps get your creatures out a lot sooner. It can produce a lot of artifacts can produce mana, help you win the edge in the game. Some of them have a stasis effect, which I'll elaborate more later. Some of them are considered equipments, so in order for them to be utilized, they have to be attached to a creature. Or some of them change and bend the rules as they see fit, in a sense. So, fun thing about Commander is that they have a set list of rules. However, there are cards that do break the rules. And with that's where Commander starts taking off to very different directions and start being even more interactive and more fun. The next type of artifact I will show you is a stasis type of artifact. So when it's on the field, it's also an enchantment. So when it's on the field, it gives the boost for all my creatures. And generally, things like spells like this will stay in the field and usually give you some type of yield of benefit, whether it's enhancing your creatures, making them allowed to swing right off the turn right when you cast them, or really just stalling out your opponent and making your opponent have to wait even another turn to seal the game. The next theme artifact I will show you is the equipments. Now they have a cost, but they also have an equipment cost on the bottom. The equipment cost is how much mana you need to tap in order for it to equip to the creature. And there's certain stipulations because some artifacts are very picky. Some artifacts say, oh, whenever attached to this creature, or whenever attached to a creature of this color. Little things you need to pay attention to. For mine, I utilize them to pretty much, again, for a card draw, so I can thin out my deck more and be able to get to the quintessential cards that I need to utilize to help seal the game. The other types of artifacts are the ones that bend the rules in a sense, which are right here. They'll generally say you choose a creature type, like this one, Door of Destiny, says choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, you get a charge counter. And then for every charge counter, each creature of that type gets a +1/+1. So while this card's on the field, all these creatures are still getting the +1/+1 benefit. So in a sense, it's bending the rules. Or like this card, Obelisk of Erd. It says, as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of your chosen type get +2/+2. It's not as big, but it's consistent with what it is. So it's not gonna go down, or it's not go up. It's gonna be consistent, and that's pretty much what you need for this deck, is good amount consistency. And then finally, we have other legendary creatures you can utilize. This was my commander. However, there is another card that you can utilize as long as it's consistent with the same color scheme. doesn't really matter. So you can have a mono black legendary creature in there, a mono white legendary creature. It's all fine and consistent. The fun thing about having a legendary creature that's with the same color identity as your main commander is that you can swap them out whenever you need to. So I can go from using Edgar Markov and his Eminence ability to utilizing Mathis Feed Seeker and be able to utilize his effect however I see fit. Again, this deck is meant to be rather quick, fast-paced. It's definitely not a slow deck. It's something that just wants to swarm the board, hit really hard, and do a lot of damage. So one things that you want to be consistent with is keeping your converted mana cost low. The lower your converted mana cost is, the more consistent your deck will be, therefore the more chances you will have to win. And the fun thing about this deck is that you don't need expensive cards. You can utilize cards that are low mana cost, that are commons, that are pennies. You can utilize cards that are, even the dollar cards that are uncommons. You can utilize them and not necessarily break your bank. And you can even get this deck itself pre-constructed at your local Walmart or your local retail store or LGS, local game store, and be able to pick it up. It's a very good value, approximately double the value of what the MSRP is, due to the fact that the content of the cards, especially with the price fluctuations that always occur with the cards itself. But yeah, this is my playstyle for my deck. It's just, you can utilize different playstyles. You can utilize, different types. You can do a control build. You can do, an aggro build, which is what I currently utilize right now. You can use a combo build, which is for more seasoned veteran players, or you can utilize the control build and be able to control what your opponents do. So it's like reactions. Oh, they're gonna play this spell, but in response, I have this card that's gonna do something to afflict my opponent. So it's kind of almost like a responsive type of theme. And pretty much it depends on your playstyle, what you want to go for. If you want to be rather aggressive, if you want to do controlling the board, if you want to really just combo off and do these crazy shenanigans, or take 20 years to do your turn. It's up to you inevitably. There's infinite ways to win, and you don't necessarily have to make a deck to win all the time. You just make it to have fun. If you like the theme, you like the way it flows, then that's all that matters, really. Some people might hate you for the deck if it's too good, but if you like it, you like it. It fits your playstyle. And with that, this will be the end of my video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't know how many I'll be doing with this. Probably my only one ever, because it's a class requirement. So yeah, thank you. Have a nice night.